one vital fact I would like to submit.
Why, howdy, partners. Welcome. My name is AJ. As you know, one half of this wonderful dynamic duo. And the dynamic duo I speak of is the Poiema Studio Podcast. Hello. Welcome again. It's an exciting Tuesday night. It is Tuesday night.
Tuesday.
Well, not right now, but like in the sense when you see it, it'll be Tuesday night. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Wherever you guys are looking at right now. But besides that, welcome again. It is AJ the Great, a.k.a. the Bleach Fajita, a.k.a. PoiemaStudio.aj. And besides me, we have my beautiful co-host.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So excited to be back. Definitely super excited for our special guest tonight. This is the first podcast of 2022. Unbelievable, right? This is Gabby. You can find me at gabbyvargas.poema on social media. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, bringing mental health awareness and our mission, suicide prevention. So, you want to introduce our guest?
I mean, I don't know if he needs introduction if you're from Elgin. Mayor, please.
Mayor, thank you so much for being here tonight.
I'm very happy to be here. You know, this is, I think you said it's the 5th year that we've been doing this.
Yes.
And we started out at Sherman Hospital, but it's part of these things are all part of a process.
Yes.
Nothing
Definitely.
happens fast.
I'm glad to know I'm a part of something that even precedes me, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
I'm happy to take it on even further. And I'm happy that we have somebody like the mayor, somebody in a position of power willing to get to our level and speak with us on these kind of topics and just speak with us in general. So thank you.
Yes.
Before we even
Very
get started.
happy to do it.
Yeah, so tonight, March 1st, when everybody's going to be watching this podcast, it is Suicide Grief Awareness Day. So what a better day than to bring awareness to what suicide grief is in the community. And again, like you're saying, Mayor, it's the 5th year since we met when I had the first awareness walk at Sherman.
Yeah.
But, first of all, we just want to get to know you a little bit more, have
Sure.
the audience get to know you better.
Yes, what makes you tick, you know,
Okay.
Yes.
what you enjoy, what you dislike, you know, maybe how much you like oatmeal cookies. I don't know. whatever speaks to your heart.
Yes. Were you born and raised in Elgin?
I was, yeah. I was born on the south end of Elgin. I went to Garfield Grade School, Ellis Middle School, Elgin High School. Then I went to Elgin Community College for 2 years and went off to a university at Bradley University. And then I came back to work in Elgin, and I worked for the Water Reclamation District, was the sanitary district then. I was the chief chemist, and I ended up being an operator and process control and ran the facility. And I did that for 33 years.
Chief chemist. So you worked with chemicals?
I did. We did water analysis, and I did. I don't know how many thousands of samples on the Fox River. Got involved. Started a group that's still in existence today. It's the Fox River Study Group, and was the first time ever that we created a coalition of municipalities and environmental groups to study the Fox River and work together to try to solve the problems. And that was a big. And I kind of was the crossover guy because I worked with the municipalities. I knew a lot of people, and that's one of the things that I've tried to do my whole life. And as the mayor and as a city councilman and working in my own neighborhood is to create coalitions and bring people together. So that's why I'm happy to work with you guys and make connections and I tell people say, well, what does the mayor do? I said, well, my main job is probably to connect dots with people. I have people come see me and say, well, gee, I need some help to do this, or I want to try to do this. And I said, well, why don't you go talk to this person? Because I know that they're doing that.
I love that formulation of how you said that, because I feel like most often people in power, like especially a mayor, should be those kind of people to connect dots, you know, because the underlings, I guess, for lack of a better term, are the ones that are in needing of this assistance. You know, we don't have all the knowledge. We haven't studied, or some of us can't or don't have the ability to have these resources available to us. So it's awesome to hear you.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I look at, I'm definitely not a micromanager of people in the city. There are professional people that work there, whether they drive a snowplow or they're the chief of police, as Anna Lally is. That's their job. And all I do is help provide the tools for them to to get the things done as best as I can, and that's what I try to do for people in the city of Elgin. I try to help them do what they want to do best. And
Awesome.
my job is the easy part because I'm the lazy guy. All I do is get them. All I do is get people inspired to.
You make a couple phone calls here and there,
and that's that's
bada bing, bada boom.
That's what I hope.
Right.
Well, you're doing an awesome job. I always see you around in the community, connecting with the community. But when the mayor was a little boy, what got him to get into the politics? Were you always, was that always something that you like to do, like help out? What was your upbringing like?
Okay, I'll tell you. My father he owned a small business on the South End. My father owned a little clothing shop, and we lived above the store when I was a kid. And then we moved not too far away so he could get away from his business on the weekends. And it was just too hard for him to, when you're that close, then, somebody comes and they want something done on Sunday afternoon, and so your time is not your own. So we moved a little bit away, not more than not even 3/4 of a mile. And so I grew up like that, but I never had an interest in being in politics, nothing. And I guess I really started when my wife and I moved over. We live in Eagle Heights, and let's say we got married in 1979, and we moved there in 1986. So right around that time, we moved in the neighborhood, and there were some issues there. We lived near Mark Avenue Apartments in Eagle Heights, and there were some gang issues going on at that time, and some drugs and stuff like that. Just like at that time, that was a kind of a typical neighborhood in Elgin. And I was sitting in the living room reading the paper, having my coffee on Sunday morning, and I read an article about a lady that lived on Mark Avenue, and they interviewed her, and she said that she was afraid to let her daughter go outside to play after 5 o'clock at night. And I told my wife that, my God, that's 5 blocks from us. So that's what really started me getting involved. Other than that, I had never done anything to be involved in neighborhood groups or anything like that. So we met another couple, and we decided they said they kind of the same thing. They only lived a block away from Mark Avenue. So we went around and put things on people's doors and said we'd like to have a neighborhood meeting and talk about stuff. And we had about 75 people show up. At that time, my wife and I were some of the younger people in the neighborhood. Well, now we're some of the older ones. But that's what kind of got me started. And one thing led to another. We got a group going. We put together 35 neighborhood watch groups. So there were small groups of 10 to 12 homes, and that covered our whole neighborhood. And we kind of took a different approach, and I still have a different approach. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And if you see something, say something, and don't be afraid. And I said, I would like, when I talk to these older people, I said, I would like us to have the highest number of police calls in the city of Elgin. They look at me like I was nuts. And I said, the reason is, I said, if people that are doing something wrong know that they're going to have somebody call the police on them, they're not going to do that very often. They're going to move on. They don't need to live they don't want to live like that. They want to do something different. So it kind of changed the way our neighborhood did. And I got, we created a neighborhood association, and one thing kind of led to another. I got on planning commission, and from there I've always been kind of just followed the course of my life. I never had a great big plan to be the mayor or anything like that. If somebody told me that when I was 35 years old, I said, you're crazy, because I had no interest in it.
That's super crazy. I mean, I think sometimes the people who do the best are the people that didn't want the job, that come from a place of passion, or I guess creation, like their passion or their drive to do this was created from an event or events, plural, So I think that's why you've done such a great job.
Well, more than anything, you saw a need and said, how can I meet that need?
Very much so.
Yes, and I think people, you never know what's going to happen in your life, and when things are going to change for you, and it may, so for young people, if you don't have a passion or a mission when you're 25 or 30, don't worry about that yet. Time will come, and maybe you'll find something, maybe you won't. But I had I'll tell you a story. I'm a story guy.
Oh, you're good. This is what we're here for.
Yeah.
You're in the right place.
I was sitting in a bar with a guy that I knew when I was at a conference. When I was working in my profession. And this guy was a Marine Corps veteran, a tough guy, farm boy from down in central Illinois. And we're sitting there talking about it. And I said, he was a Marine Corps sergeant, served in Vietnam two tours. And we're sitting there, and I said, I really felt like I missed something because I didn't go. I was kind of in between. I was always draft eligible, but I was in college. And by the time I got out of college, Nixon had started to do away with the draft. And they started to pull out of Vietnam. So I didn't go. And I said, I always felt like I missed something. Because I said there's a special thing when you work with people and you develop a bond with the guys that you're in. And he looked at me and he said, Dave, he said, you're crazy. He said, I was there. And he said, sometimes God has a plan for you, and it's not up to you. And he said, you follow what God does. And he says, God sent him there. And he says, I think to this day, he said, I walked out of there and I saw guys die on both sides of me. And I walked out and he said, I asked myself, why me? Why did I survive? And I hear that a lot from veterans, that they have that and they carry that with them. Why did my friend die and I survived? And there's sometimes there's a God's plan for you. And maybe God's plan for me was I was going to come along and be what I am today.
Yes.
So that's kind of the way I look. That's kind of what I look at in my philosophy, I guess.
I mean, I guess that kind of bleeds into the question of how do you keep your passion up, because you do a lot of great work, and this work I'm pretty sure takes a toll. Sometimes how do you keep it up? How do you
take care of your mental health?
How do you sustain yourself?
Yeah, and it does take a toll, and it's I try to be careful so I don't bring stuff home to my wife. But you have to have a strong partner to do some things, and you have to have that buy-in from her as well. You can't run for mayor and not have her want you to do that or want you to be that. So the passion is I look at people. I want to help people. That's why I said I love connecting the dots. That's the best part of my job. The hard part of my job is telling people, no, I can't help you, or I can't do this for you. And come in and they think, well, and then they get upset. And I always laugh. I said, people think the mayor's at the top of the city and the thing. I said, well, it's not true because I'm at the bottom. I said, by the time people get to me and they have a complaint, they've already gone through other people at the city. So they're really angry. So I come there and I have to tell them, I said, well, so-and-so told you no. They told you no. I'm going to tell you no, too. I can't do this for you. And here's why. And by the time I hope that I can tell them in a way that they understand that and they can go on with their life and not let that eat them up. So there's too many other things in the world and too many other things in life to have those kind of things consume you. And, my passion for doing the job is I always had a vision, and I ran for a mayor. I ran as a point when I did it that I would have given my seat up if I lost, and I ran it against the incumbent mayor, and I liked him, nice guy, and he'd been mayor for 12 years, and we both had a vision for the city of Elgin. We wanted it to be a place, and we wanted to raise the standard of living for the people that were here and make Elgin a little bit better community. This was 12 years ago. And the difference was he had a different way to get there than I did. He thought that the way to make Elgin better was to bring in wealthy people and try to attract wealthier people. And my thought was I wanted to raise the people that were at the bottom and raise people up so that we all moved forward. And I said, if we can't do that, I said, the people that are poor in this community will be like the anchor of the Queen Mary around us.
Yes.
And we can't move forward because they can't move.
Very true.
And they're going to hold us back. So that's been my philosophy, and that's what I try to do.
That's awesome. I love that philosophy, especially like you're saying, like at one point, you have to see like, as a community, you can't have just one side of the community doing well and not see that there's another side of it struggling.
Right.
So what are your hobbies? What are you into in the sense of how do you distress from your position and all the work?
I've always been a reader. I love to read. And My wife, I don't think she ever read one book that I read. And I like to read mystery stories and spy books and things like that. So I just kind of lose myself in something. I always read fiction, and I have some nonfiction that I look at once in a while. I've read all the books on the history of the city of Elgin because that was what I do. And I wanted to know about the history of my town. So like I said, I'm a storyteller, and people, so I know you get old when people come up to you and ask you, well, what was over here when this, or what was in this building? So I'm at that point now. But that's what I really love to do. And I love to walk. My wife and I garden. I love to grow vegetables. I like to, believe it or not, I'm the cook at home. I love to cook. I like to eat. And
I have for you there, Mayor.
That's my hobby, and
Awesome.
that's one of the things that I do to de-stress. And I plan the meals out. I tell my wife, well, I think, well, let's have this or let's try this. And
Eating could be a dangerous hobby.
Yeah,
I like a very dangerous hobby.
I like to find new stuff to do, and that's what I do to kind of de-stress. And that's my afternoon today. It was what I cooked our dinner today.
That's
awesome.
What's the mayor's best dish if it had to be on the menu?
There you go. I laugh. I tell people too the same thing, and I don't tell people how to do their job. But I said I love to eat and I love to cook, but I could never run a restaurant. So I admire people that can do that. Let them do what they do best.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I totally agree.
Exactly. Very good. Well, shout out to your wife for being supportive of you and letting you be the man that you are today in our city.
Thank you.
And we go back to, what we were talking about, that you connect the dots.
Yeah.
And you saw a need, and here you are today. And if it wasn't for your encouragement and support, we probably would not be here either.
At all.
I saw a need as well in my community was after losing a friend and a loved one to suicide, I got to see the difference of another death in the community, how people didn't want to talk about it and the fear of talking about it. And just in my family, how heartbreaking and, just all of it when it comes to suicide, it was so different than anything else. So after my own struggles, I decided that I wanted to bring awareness to it. And I remember that I decided to email, it was like I found that passion, right? I said, I want to make a difference. I want to remember my cousin, not for suicide, but for the person that he was, because I kind of just thought, it could have been me. And so I emailed you. I went into the city's, contact list. I don't even know what I was thinking, but I emailed you and I was so surprised to get your email back. I was like, oh my gosh, the mayor replied to me, and I invited you to the walk. And I think you were one of the first persons there with Anna. Yep. And I was just so amazed at, just, I don't know. I just, to me, someone in politics, like the mayor was, like you said, all the way up here, someone so unreachable, but you were so humble. You are so just the energy you give, you're so welcoming. And to me, that really encouraged me, because I was like, if the mayor cares about this, then we should all care about this as well. Because, that's the thing that we don't think about. Suicide can affect anyone. It's not like a social status or anything like that. So, yeah, when I reached out to you, you said it absolutely, because you're a survivor yourself.
Yes.
So you want to share a little bit about why this is important to you?
Yeah. And I think, I'm 74 years old, and I try to think back, and I know I'm positive that I've known 5 or 6 people that have committed suicide, and for different reasons. And some people that I knew, just a couple stories. I guess one fellow I knew was a businessman in Elgin. And he and I started to chat a little bit, and we're talking about doing some things. And he said, well, gee, maybe your wife and we should go out to dinner. I said, that'd be good. So he said, let's plan on it in a couple of weeks. Never saw him again. Killed himself. And I didn't know why. And I never would suspect that would be the case. And, I don't it's hard to understand, and you can't put yourself in their shoes. And so I think that's kind of disturbing to me. And I just saw a thing that on CNN is going to do a program on Anthony Bourdain, and he killed himself. And here's a guy, the world is his. He's traveling the world. He's got a job. He eats and drinks and meets people.
Most people would be envious of him.
Yeah, exactly. And something with him failed. You know, I don't know what it was, and he took his own life. You know, and other people, I call you call it a survivor, and and you're right. It's not that I tried to commit suicide or anything like that, but you know people that have, so you have become a survivor because of them. And here's a story. This is a personal one for me. And my mother, she's passed away 15, 20 years ago now. And when she was 17 or 18 years old, she was born in 1911, so it was like 1929. And she had a boyfriend, and they lived in Batavia, and he was a kind of a star athlete in Geneva, at Geneva High School. And they were going to break up. So they were out in the car, and she told him they were going to break up, and he pulled out a gun and shot himself in the head, sitting next to her in the car. Wow. And my mother never told me. We never had guns in our house. Guns were not allowed in our house. And I was not allowed to own a gun. She'd want me to have one. Never, just didn't do it. And I found the article when I was going through their papers after my parents passed away. I was going through the papers, and I found this old newspaper thing. And I called my sister. She's 13 years older, or 10 years older than me. And I said, how come nobody ever told me this? And she says, well, we thought you knew. I said, never knew. And my mother never talked about it. She lived to be 85 years old and carried that with her,
that trauma,
her whole life.
Wow.
And kept it inside. And that's probably not I hope that sometime there was a release.
Yeah.
You know,
I hope so as well.
To carry that kind of thing. And that's kind of the message I think that, you know, I want to give to people. If you have that, you need to talk to somebody, whether it's your minister or a good friend or something. And from us as people, like I said, if you see something, say something. And if you see somebody that you see that they're struggling for a reason, or they tell you that, gee, I can't deal with this anymore. You've got to say something.
Yes.
And either to them and say, do you need help, or we want to talk or chat, or come to you guys.
Yes, come to Poiema.
And release, and get that release and get it out.
Yes, that's exactly what we're about. So
yeah,
I'm glad that's the same mindset that you have, because it's all about release, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, you might not be able to heal or fix everything right away, but you can at least learn and come to terms with it, and learn how to, you know, go through life without it bogging you down for most of it.
Yeah.
Because life is short. So.
Oh, it sure is. And shorter than what you think. And, people suffer illnesses, or they have financial trouble, things like that. And some of those things, you know, it's not easy, but you can overcome them. You'll all live them, I guess is the way I say it. Yeah, you can.
Very true.
Yeah, and you don't look at it from a day-to-day thing. And if you can put it in and as part of the, everybody in the course of my time in 75 years, you're always going to have bumps. That you go through, bumps in your life and bumps in your road, and you lose a friend or you lose your parents. And, I think you lose a loved one, and that can think, well, I don't have a reason to live anymore. And in one way, I see people that are get elderly, and I see in the paper all the time, and I kind of look at this stuff, and say they were married 65 years. And the wife passes away, and the husband says, well, the hole is too big in my life. And they don't necessarily take their own life, but I think they give up.
Yes.
At that point. Now they feel like there's nothing.
Being with somebody for that long, I can only imagine the vacancy that it leaves, after a while, being so attached to a person.
Exactly. And it's not suicide, but it's and they follow. And maybe they're frail themselves, but that happens. That's not infrequent, but it does.
It's a good cause, like your body will start to shut down, because mentally, like, it's a whole mental game as well. Your mind is very strong, so if you start to slowly, like you said, give up on yourself, being old, I mean, you don't have much reserves left in you. I would think, sadly. So I think it's a big cause, it's something that we should talk about as well. Not only suicide in the younger people, but in the elderly of loss of change. Change is big, especially for somebody living that long. and then something that massive comes in their life, I'm pretty sure complacency kicks in at a older age as well. You know, because things have been stagnant for so long, so it's such a massive hit.
Yes.
And now you have older kids that are probably like kind of living their own life. My youngest was telling me that he's like, Mom, we for Valentine's Day we made some cards for the older people and for the seniors, and I was like, oh, that's wonderful. So we kind of started to talk about that, and he's like, yeah, because my teacher was saying that once they go into this place, like, and I'm assuming it's like a home, like a nursing home, he's like, nobody visits them, and I was like, well, I'm sure some people do get visits, but how many seniors are not alone because their kids, are also busy with their life.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming even like now that we had COVID, a lot of those places couldn't take visitors. So
Right.
imagine how, it affected their life as well.
Yeah.
Suicide is very high also in the senior community. I mean, and right now after the pandemic, we're not even there yet, like with the wave of people going through their struggles. Like you said, grief comes in all kinds of ways, not just death of a loved one, but also losing a job. How many people didn't, lose their homes because they lost their job? Just so many things that can affect a person. And in what you were saying, in regards to your mom's story, trauma is one of the main reasons why a lot of people deal with, mental illness and a lot of suicide, ideation and stuff. So if people could just, look at their trauma and say, okay, I'm human. I went through this. Like, how do I move forward with this instead of, sitting and dwelling in that trauma and just keeping it in? Because what you said when we had our last meeting was you see something and say something, but also who do you say it to and how are they willing to help you?
Yeah, that exactly. Who do you say it to? And it would be, do you tell somebody's parents that I'm their best friend. We're in high school, and you're I think Bob or Jane or whatever is having some trouble here, and but if you don't say something, it doesn't. The problem doesn't get fixed. And like I said, that's one of my things. I always tell you can't fix the problem until you realize you have the problem and say that there is a problem.
Yeah, ignorance is bliss, but ignorance doesn't cure anything.
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah, but what we were saying, if that's the message we can share today with our community, to say there are people in our community that care. Obviously, I could speak about us here at Poiema, where we were talking about how we want to get more involved with helping the youth. You said you started an alliance, right? And you were speaking to these 8th graders. You want to share about that?
Sure. And quick story. One of the things as mayor, we had goals that were set for us by the community, and one was that the city should be more involved in education. Well, we have school districts. That's not what the mayor does here in Elgin. The mayor of Chicago does, but we don't do that here. So I said, well, how do I do that? And I talked to some business leaders, and they said, well, we can't get workers. We can't get educated workers. So I said, well, that's what we do. I'll talk to the school district. We'll see if we can make a connection with people. And what we did was try to tell people and young people that it's not always necessary to go to college, that there are good jobs out here for you. And they asked me.
Thank you for that, honestly, because that's one of the reasons that messed me up in I think in school and high school was dealing with my anxiety and my own depression is hearing constantly like, you got to go to college. You got to go to college. If you don't go to college, if you don't know what you want to do right now, like, you're screwed. Like, why don't you know what you're doing? Why don't you know what you're doing?
Yeah.
And that still permeates through my mind from time to time. Like in the back of my head, I'll get those little voices of like, why don't you know what you're doing right now? Like, why don't you know what you want to be in college? Why aren't you done with college yet? Like that. So you saying that and having that it is great relief and is going to be helpful for a lot of students, I think.
Yeah, and it, I think that's a challenge. No, I think that's something that the schools kind of changed into. They felt that everybody has to go there, otherwise you can't be a success, and that's not true. So they asked me to come back to my old school where I went to Ellis Middle School and talk to the 8th graders there. So I think they were like a history class or something like that. And they brought 2 classes in, so there's about 60 kids in there, 70 kids. And all minority kids, all, what are they, 14 years old, around that. And I started to talk to them, and they wanted to know what the mayor does and that kind of thing. And they said, well, what are you working on? One kid says, well, what are you working on now? So I told them about this. I said, this alignment collaborative. And I said, we're trying to intercept young people and tell them that there is a good job out there for you if you can't go to college. Because sometimes, maybe you got 5 brothers and sisters and your family can't afford to do that. Or whatever the reason is, you don't think you're going to be able to make it to college. I said, there's a good job out there for you, but you got to train for that job. And I said, whether it's a plumber or a cook or a auto mechanic or something like that, there are good jobs. And I said, you can start out making a very good living and good money. And I said, you don't have to go to college. And these kids looked at me, and I went back and I talked to the school board, 246 school board. And I say, I looked out at those kids and I saw their faces change. I literally saw their faces change. And I said, I gave them something. Didn't cost me anything, but I gave them hope.
Hope.
That there's hope now that I can do something. And I said, if they gave up, I said, those kids were giving up in 8th grade.
Wow.
And I said, once they give up, they fall behind, and then you can't catch up.
Yeah, you fall behind. You start self-medicating with, other substances. And, at that age, all you want to do is feel like you belong somewhere, feel like you're part of something. And that's one of the hardest things.
And we talked to Tony Sanders, and I talked about this afterwards. And it changed the way U46 does some things. They started these academies they have auto mechanic class, they have cook. And he says another thing that it created, he said these kids, the way that the school system worked now, they shuffled between classes all the time. So it was harder for them to develop long-term relationships with the people. I said, but now there's 30 or 40 kids that all want to be auto mechanics. So they share a common thing. And he said they're developing relationships that might stay with them their whole life.
That's so great.
And I think so that was kind of an unintended consequence or an unintended benefit of this, I think. And it may change the way that people look at things. And, I had one other thing for people, I think that, you have to talk. You try to do the things that you want to do, at least part of it. Sometimes you end up doing a job, and sometimes it's not the best job for you, but you do it because you need to make the money. And it may not be what you want to do, but your goal might be, God, I like to save enough money and be able to go start my own restaurant, for example, something like that. And I used my doctor as an example, and he told me that he's a doctor, his wife was a nurse, his daughter became a doctor, went to medical school, and his son's going to school. And they trying to get, assume that he wanted to be in the medical profession. So he started, and he said he came home one night and he said, Dad, I don't want to do that. He said, I just not what I want to do. He said, well, what do you want to do? He said, I want to be a cook. So he went out to ECC and went through the culinary program, ended up in Chicago, working at a big restaurant, and finally went up to Door County in Wisconsin. And he became the manager, and I think he's the owner of a restaurant up there now. And his father says he's the happiest, as happy as a man can be, and has his family up there. And that's what he wanted to do. He's doing what he loves to do and went where he wanted to do. And, maybe he's not going to ever be rich, but he's a happy guy.
He's a happy guy.
And at the end of the day, that's the important thing.
That's
honestly,
the important thing.
I guess you would agree that like being realistic with yourself, like could you realistically do a job, or go to school and actually accomplish it or enjoy it, So it's good that you, like you said, you're giving kids hope. You're giving kids an alternative, giving them a view that, like, look, it's not so dogmatic. You don't have to be pinholed or cornholed into the same spot as everybody else. Like, look, if somebody's going this way, you can go that way. You can go that way. You can go that way. Like,
that's right.
I think that's what's important because, like you said, they start to build friendships through things that they enjoy and things that they naturally enjoy. Things that they're not forced to be a part of. Like, college is sometimes it's an environment like that people might not be cool with, like all the many people there and having those anxieties, maybe like you said, maybe just having a mechanic job where you like work with 1 or 2 people and you're just by yourself or things like that. Like, it helps people be realistic with themselves and look in themselves like, what can I do or what do I want to do?
Right. And I think that especially for young people, life's not a sprint; it's a marathon. And you know, if you start out and you're not happy, and you're 23, 25 years old, and you think your job is crummy, and you don't feel I'm doomed here, your life could change in a heartbeat 10 years from now. And you'll be going in a different direction, and that's a good thing. But you always have to give yourself that chance, and you have to give life a chance to put you in that position where you can do those things. And you know, you read so many stories sometimes that somebody and you know, I've never been a really religious guy, but there are so many things that happened in my life that kind of steered me to where I'm at, and I can't explain them. You know, it's just a coincidence or something happened. And so I think maybe there is something that pushes you and directs you in a way. Or you learn to take advantage of things and something comes along. And, you know, you're for a young person, your whole life may revolve around maybe you'll pull some people out of a burning car on the side of a road someday. And maybe that was your purpose in life, was to save those people. And you just don't know that. So, but give yourself a chance and give life a chance. And don't give it up.
Don't give it up. Awesome.
I think that's beautifully put.
Yeah, that is beautifully put. Like I always tell AJ, I'm like, I never in a million years thought we would be here running a drumming circle. We've, like I was sharing with you, we've been doing a drumming circle with EMSA 5th and 6th grade students.
Yep.
I'm like, never in a million years. And I was at Sherman for 14 years as a medical interpreter. I never thought I'd have a studio doing this work. And I started a new job working for the Children's Advocacy Center this year, well, actually last year at the end of it, teaching kids about body safety for sexual abuse prevention. And here I am with like these kids. It's a beach theme, so we tell them about their private parts covered by a bathing suit, and I'm there with my little turtle puppet. I have a seagull and a turtle, and I'm like, I never thought I would be sitting there with these preschoolers telling them about body safety, you know? But I've really, like, just my whole life and my experience doing all this work, I love prevention, because if I can change this little child's life, 3-4-year-olds, that half of the time I'm like, I wonder if they really get what I'm saying. But, you know, just that you can impact and plant that little seed in someone's life just by giving yourself the opportunity, like the chance, you know. Like I said, I had my own struggles. Suicide, you know, was a huge, you know, something I thought about, planned, and I just felt like my life I was hopeless so many times in my life. And it wasn't until I decided to get professional help, I decided to say, okay, what can I do for someone else? How can I help someone else? I started to see how, you know, I started finding a purpose, and here I am. And like, who would have thought that we would be sitting here together? And, you know, again, if we could just, you know, see yourself in a light that, you know, you have a purpose. And, you know, like you were saying, you never thought you would be a mayor, but I'm sure you've made so many connections in this community. And I'm sure there's a lot of people like myself that can look back and say, wow, like, thank you to the mayor for giving us an opportunity and believing in us.
Yep. And that's what I do it for. That's exactly what I do it for. And again, I think the message should be to everybody: give life a chance.
Give life a chance.
Yeah, give yourself a chance and give life a chance.
Love it.
That. Should we start talking about March 1st? You know, should we promote that?
Sure.
A bit. I feel like that's something. Gabby, would you like to take reins on that?
Yeah. So last year we proclaimed, was it last year, Mayor? Yeah, I think it was last year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so last year, oh my goodness. We opened the studio almost a year ago. I can't believe it went by that fast. But March 1st, we did, we proclaimed Suicide Grief Awareness Day at Sherman in their Tree of Life. But it was during the pandemic that I feel like it was very, very small. Maybe a lot of people didn't know. So this podcast video, this segment is a way for us to bring awareness to suicide, to share with the community that we will be starting our suicide loss grief support group. So that's going to be March 6th at 4:00 here at Poiema Studio. But I asked you to bring the proclamation so that we could read it again and have the community know that from here on out, we are going to work together with the city to bring awareness and to give hope, especially to those that have lost someone to suicide, because we know it's not an easy thing. It's one of the most traumatic types of deaths, and we're here to support you guys and tell you guys that we are here to support you in any way that we can and possible. So, Mayor, if you can do us the honor of reading the
I sure will.
proclamation, thank you so much.
Whereas suicide is one of the most disruptive and tragic events a family and community can experience, and there are 41,000 plus reported suicide deaths in this nation every year. On an average of one person dies from suicide every 12 minutes, representing not only waste of human life, but untold suffering for the families and friends of those who die in this tragic way. And whereas suicidal thoughts can affect anyone regardless of age, gender, race, orientation, income level, religion, or background, and according to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, suicide is the 10th leading cause of death among adults and the second leading cause of death among individuals between the ages of 10 and 24 in the United States. And it is estimated that in 2017, 1.5 million people unwillingly became lost survivors, the close family and friends left behind after a suicide, and are forced to cope with the loss of a loved one, navigate uncertain futures, and struggle to accept they may never know why. And whereas Suicide Grief Awareness Day is observed every year on March 1st and seeks to change the culture surrounding suicide grief, bring attention to the importance of offering assistance to suicide loss survivors and an opportunity to raise awareness of the painful impact that suicide has on our communities. And whereas on March 19th, the first day of spring, the season where the highest number of suicides occur, there will be a purple tree lighting event in front of the Elgin Police Department for suicide awareness near where perennial bulbs symbolizing hope after the darkness have been planted. Now, therefore, I, David Captain, Mayor of the City of Elgin, Illinois, do hereby proclaim March 1st as Suicide Grief Awareness Day in support to survivors of suicide out of hiding and into healing their efforts to bring the community of love and support together for healing and purpose through the Suicide Loss Grief Support Group.
Thank you, Mayor.
March 1st, 2022.
March 1st, yes. And like it said, suicide loss survivors out of hiding and into healing, that they can come out of hiding because there should be no shame. It's like any other death because it's a public health problem. Anyone can go through it. So we're going to be meeting at 4 o'clock. The first day of spring this year, 2022, is actually the 20th of March. So it'll be a Sunday. So we'll meet here at Poiema and then head on over to in front of the police station. We adopted a tree where we have the purple tree lights. Yep. So again, Mayor, thank you so much for being, a channel for us to share this awareness with the community, and also, just for sharing your story in the space with us and just being so loving and humble with us all the time. It's just been such a great pleasure to meet you.
It's always my honor to be here, and I'll enjoy being there with you.
Thank you
so much.
Well, apart from telling every single guest we had last year that this was the chair the mayor was going to sit in, we finally get you to sit here. We
finally got it, guys. We finally did it.
Everyone we told that to, they kind of like sat a different way. They're like, "Oh, I'm going to warm it up for the mayor, huh?"
There we go.
So here we finally got you in the chair. Such a great honor to have you. But there's a question we ask all of our guests. What would be your advice to
all
the
guests
younger?
That we remember to ask about.
Yes, that we remember. What would be your advice to the younger you, to David back in high school or the young age? I
think that look forward, and again, life is not a sprint; it's a marathon. Give life a chance. Give yourself a chance, and you just keep working hard and go where life takes you. And just follow it along, and I think you'll be. And I hope, and you look for happiness in your life, and it's not necessarily you find it in wealth or things like that or fame. Just be happy.
Well,
awesome.
I think we should end it with those beautiful words. Thank
beautiful
you, everybody,
words.
for coming.
Thank
Remember
you.
to like, comment, share, subscribe. Thank you, Mayor, for arriving safely. It's crazy out there, but yes, thank you again, you guys, and
thank you so much.
We see you all March 1st. You know where to find us at. Hopefully, if you need any help from the mayor, he's more than receptive towards assisting anybody.
Easy to find.
Very easy to
find.
So thank you, everybody.
Thank you guys for watching.
There is one
Good
vital
night.
fact I would like to submit.